Hello, friends, and welcome to the podcast today. So, do you really know what you're eating? Maybe you're wondering, how bad are processed foods really? Is a little okay? How much can I have? So, today I'm going to be talking about processed foods, and then I'm going to give you 3 tips for eating more whole foods and becoming more aware of what you're eating. And this happened just today to me and my husband. We went out for dinner tonight to Mod Pizza. We have gone there before because they have like gluten-free options. You can get dairy-free cheese, and they have lots of different options. And what we thought we were eating is very different. So my husband is trying to do like a low carb keto type thing. So they have a cauliflower crust. And if we think cauliflower crust, we're thinking low carb. So as we were waiting for our food, I'm like, I just want to look this up. So the cauliflower crust has 87 grams of carbohydrates. So not low carb at all. And that's if you ate a whole pizza. But I mean, he ate everything except one piece of his pizza. It does have 18 grams of protein because in this cauliflower crust, they are putting mozzarella cheese in it in addition to the cauliflower. So if you're thinking like me, where is all this carbohydrate coming from when it's supposed to be cauliflower? Well, if you actually go and look at the ingredients, you will see that the first ingredient is cauliflower. So when you're reading a nutrition label, whatever comes first is the most in it. So cauliflower is first, and then mozzarella cheese is next. And what's interesting here that the food industry can do, so when we're putting an order of most to least, is they can split up different sugars. They can split up different starches. So those aren't the first ingredient on the list because they're a little bit different. So after that comes rice flour, which is a starch, then tapioca starch, which is a starch. And typically the ones that have starch are going to spike your blood sugar a little higher. It does have egg whites, and then more rice starch, then modified food starch, and then sugar, yeast, and salt, then cultured brown rice, which is a starch, and then some seasoning and a preservative. So you can tell when you're eating this, it's just not what you think it is. And this is how a lot of things are. So we really have to bring awareness to what we're eating. We have to educate ourselves. Okay, so remember this cauliflower crust had 87 grams of carbohydrates. Their normal mod crust has 88 grams of carbohydrates. So the regular gluten crust has 1 more gram of carbohydrate. And it still has 16 grams of protein in it too. The cauliflower crust had 18. Like, that just blows my mind when you look at that, because you think you're getting something totally different and you're not. And they also have a gluten-friendly crust. So that's what I get because I try to eat gluten-free and dairy-free because I had autoimmune stuff starting. And this doesn't surprise me because I sort of know this. Like, the gluten-friendly crust has 710 calories. Cauliflower had 590. The regular crust had 490. And it also has 156 grams of carbohydrates. Typically, when you're doing this gluten-free stuff, is they put more of those starches in them. So if we look at the gluten-friendly crust, the first ingredient is water. Next is rice flour. Then it's modified rice starch, potato starch, sugar, tapioca starch, potato flour, a canola olive oil blend, and just a couple other things. So you can tell it has a lot of carbohydrates. So sometimes when we're thinking we're eating something, it might be different than what we think. We have to look at these actual ingredients. All right, so that is just to get us started. I haven't even dived into the topic yet, but I thought that was such a great example. So coming to a place where we can eat healthier, have more whole foods, where we have more of an awareness about processed foods, about what our food is, it can really help us to live healthier and be healthier on the inside. And this is hard, but it's so crucial. And sometimes we have attachments to food that we've grown up with. Sometimes we struggle if we're going out. How do we fit in at this party if we're not eating what everybody else is eating? And we have to come to a place where we really love ourselves and we really want to nourish our bodies. And this has to really be the cornerstone of our decisions. So we can't come from a place of wanting to restrict, but of self-love where I want to nourish my body. And I encourage you guys, if you need any support, I have my course, Healthy Inside and Out, where I go through these practical nutrition principles. I educate you about blood sugar and also help. There's meditations in the course, so to help with these mind-body pieces. I also do one-to-one health coaching where we can dive deeper into those emotional connections, the problem solving. And I also have my online personal training app where we can set up an exercise program just for you. And you can have that support. You can have that accountability. We can check in with each other throughout the week. So there's going to be links down below for that. If you're not sure where to get started, but you're ready to take that next step in your health, feel free to set up a free call and we can chat and see what would be best for you. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Healthy Beyond 40 show. I'm Michele, mama 4 and military wife, and I'm passionate about helping women get healthy from the inside out so they can feel better and live their best life. Do you feel like you're struggling to lose weight and get in shape? If you're ready to develop healthier habits, exercise consistently, and lose weight sustainably, then you're in the right place. I combine my expertise from my doctorate in physical therapy to my experience as a health coach, personal trainer, and yoga teacher to bring you actionable steps for a healthy lifestyle. No magic pill here, so lace up those shoes and get moving. So for most of America, 60 to 70% of our diet is processed, and this is the same for kids. And food that is processed and ultra processed, there's a lot of studies that just show increased death, worse health outcomes. And I feel like we sort of know this, but we don't really know it. And there's just a lot more behind it with the food industry and how things are made. So even food that can be broken down, mechanically separated, all these things they can do to our food are really recent. And we don't quite always understand the full impact of what happens. And they're still discovering, because sometimes when we eat like this for long enough, it really takes a long time for studies to then come out and show these health consequences. And we need people to do the studies too, because a lot of times the studies are funded by the food industry, or some of the studies will have investment in other companies or other interests. So some of the studies that come out can be skewed. And our government has subsidies in corn, wheat, and soy. That's why these foods are so abundant. At one time, our government helped out because we needed it during the world wars to have food and have food that would last, and things become subsidized and they've just stayed that way, even though we now know these aren't healthy foods and we're not starving. We have an abundance of food for most of us. I know there are some people out there in America that are still struggling with getting enough food, but for the most case and for people listening to us, that's not the case. And the food industry knows how to make processed food taste better. 3 things. Let's see if you can guess what they are. Sugar, fat, and salt. So they add these to our foods and they add them in different proportions. So maybe they want to make something low fat. That means they're going to bump the other ones up. So they alter these things. And there's other food science that goes into making processed foods taste good, smell good, look good, and different things like that. And just like I was saying with when you're reading a food label, they can break up that starch, they can break up that sugar. So it's not the first ingredient on the list, even though when you look at that sugar as a whole, it would be the most. So things can be very deceiving when we're looking at food labels. I also heard there was a study where people who ate ultra-processed foods, and ultra-processed foods, we're just talking like breads, crackers, chips, different things like this, that are very common around most of us, around a lot of our kids. And so when people were eating these ultra-processed foods, they were eating 500 more calories a week. And that's because it's not filling. You're not getting the protein and the fiber that helps to fill you up and make you feel satiated and not hungry. So by eating more processed foods, it fuels that cycle for you to want to eat more. And as we're talking about processed foods, know that a lot of foods are processed, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. So for example, if you take a strawberry and you smash it or you blend it, that has become processed. So we want minimal processing and we want to know what's in those foods. We don't want these chemicals, sugar, and all the omega-6 oils that are inflammatory that they're adding to our food, and salad dressing and chips. We have soy and corn oil, all these seed oils that we were not meant to consume as much. And the food industry has drifted towards those because they are cheaper and because our government subsidized some of those. Those are a lot more cheaper for companies to use. They also, again, with messing with that sugar, fat, salt, they make foods hyper palatable. So they make them taste better than what they are. That makes us want more. And this is all thanks to food scientists and food engineers that spend their work doing this, working for food companies. And I also think a lot of times on labels, we can basically see false claims. We can see things that are deceiving. And just like with this cauliflower crust, we're thinking, okay, this is like a lower carb option. It's not at all. So we might see gluten-free on a label. We might see vegan. We might see whole grains on a label. We see these different claims, but that doesn't mean they're healthy. You know, if we look in the produce aisle, we see apples, carrots, green beans, all these things. They don't have a label on them. That's a healthy food. So we don't need some type of label, some type of diet claim to think it's healthy. We have to look at that ingredients list. We have to be educated about what's healthy. We have to avoid those extra starches they're adding to food. We have to avoid the extra sugar, knowing all the different names for sugar. So we can have just that cane sugar, but there's all different things that basically act like sugar that we have to be aware of. We have to be aware of all these seed oils and omega-6 oils that are causing inflammation in our body. And as I'm talking about inflammation, that's something I'm passionate about, especially when it comes to helping people increase their omega-3s and step into a more anti-inflammatory body to really improve their cellular health. So I partnered with Zinzino. I'm an independent partner with them because they offer at-home testing for you to test your omega levels. And they have a high-quality omega-3 oil that is not oxidized. It doesn't taste fishy. And then they allow you to retest so you can actually see that their oil is working. Because I have seen people taking different oils and their levels were still not in a good ratio. So you want to make sure it's a high-quality oil. So there will be a link down below where you can find out more information about that. And just send me a message on Facebook or Instagram if you have questions or need help ordering. And so as we're also talking about processed food, I want to bring up, when we read that label, there might be preservatives and there are emulsifiers, food additives, and these kind of wreak havoc on our gut. It can increase inflammation, and these things in the lifespan of humans are relatively new, and they do know some of the effects of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's still more effects and more stuff that we don't understand about all these things added to our food. So especially if you're wanting to decrease inflammation, if you're wanting to improve your gut health, processed foods are not going to help you. And especially as I gave my example of eating out, when you're eating out, you really don't know what you're getting a lot of the time. Some places you can't even look up the nutrition information. You can't even find out what they're putting in food. But a lot of times you go to restaurants and their food tastes really good. It's probably because they've added extra fat, sugar, salt. They probably have different like preservatives, different flavorings, different all this fake stuff in it. So I'm not saying don't ever eat out. You just heard I eat out, but we really need to keep eating out to a minimum because we want to really be in control of what we're putting into our body, or we want to know some really healthy places to go to eat that are using more fresh food, that they don't have the preservatives, they don't have the extra sugar and seed oils and that kind of stuff in it that we just don't need. And so when we're eating more of this processed food, there are studies that show more mental illness. I have seen in clients who start decreasing their sugar and they say their anxiety is going down. With processed food, there is more diabetes, dementia, death of any cause, heart disease, all these things really cause inflammation and affect the inside of our body. And our brains and our cells, they just don't work as good when we are eating this processed food. All right. So I'm going to go over 3 quick tips. And the first one I have definitely talked to is read labels and the ingredients. So don't just read the nutrition label. Look at the ingredients so you can actually know what is in your food. So I encourage you to do this with everything you're eating. So you don't have to become obsessed about it in a day and stress yourself out. But look at the ingredients of what you're eating. Are there some foods in your house or stuff that you habitually eat that have added sugar, have added seed oils, have way too much salt, have chemicals in them, emulsifiers, food additives, artificial coloring, any of these things, that maybe you can start getting rid of those and replace them with something healthier. Replace it more with a whole food, because we don't want to just buy another processed food that claims to be healthy, but it isn't. So really take that time to read labels, look at ingredients, educate yourself. If you can't pronounce it, it's probably not a whole food. If it sounds like it's a chemical or something engineered, it probably is, and we don't want to be consuming that. And if you've listened here enough, health is a journey. So it might first just be reducing the amount, picking one thing to get rid of, and then another thing. It can be a process too, so it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. The less processed food you can eat, the healthier your body is going to be. So if that means just changing your breakfast for now, you're in a better spot. And then maybe when you're ready, you can work on lunch. Tip number 2 is make sure you drink enough water. So this helps to keep you hydrated, but it also helps your brain function. There's this brain doctor I like to listen to, and he scans people's brain and shows the function of their brain. And I saw a brain scan today of someone who was dehydrated and someone who was hydrated. And their brain function was so much worse when it was dehydrated. So making sure that you're getting enough water. And along with this, skipping those sweet drinks or adding extra things to your water. Most of your day should be drinking water, herbal tea. You could squeeze some lemon in it, but we don't want to be adding chemicals to our drinks. And that's what a lot of different things that you can put in your drinks, even if they have 0 calories, are just different chemicals. So it's not going to help our gut health. It's going to increase inflammation in our body. Tip number 3 is when you're trying to decrease your processed foods and eat more whole foods, you really have to do good with meal planning and meal prepping. And so this can take some figuring out how it's going to work for you. I work on this with my clients, because if you're not just grabbing that granola bar, you have to plan it out. So really making sure that you have meat prepared. So for this past week on Sunday, I cooked some chicken to have for my salads for the week. I also prepped some almond pancakes that had protein in them for the week and had some different veggies ready. Another thing you can do if you eat eggs is you can make egg muffins. I have air quotes. There's no bread in there, but you basically make scrambled eggs. You pour them in an egg muffin dish, cook them in the oven, and then you can freeze them so it's ready to go. So thinking about if you need something fast and quick, what can you prep ahead of time so that you have a healthy and quick snack? And we also have to know we need to spend time planning and preparing food. We don't have to make it complicated or long, but we're meant to eat food and we need to take that little bit of time to do it. And I think it gets so easy to get away from making food and prepping. It takes a lot of time. Most of us are eating 3 meals a day. Some of us, we're eating more often than that. It's a lot of time. So we want to also take that little bit of time to making sure that we're planning and prepping so that we can eat well, because we need food each day. So we want to make that count. So for some people, that might be a little mental shift of meal planning, meal prepping. How can I have a better attitude about this? So I would love it if you guys would head to the Facebook group, Healthy Beyond 40, and share something that you took away from this episode, or maybe something that you weren't aware of before, or maybe it's one of your favorite meal planning or something that you prep each week. Share it in the group so that we can all encourage and inspire each other, because I know you guys have a lot of good ideas out there and everybody needs to hear something a little different. In the next episode, I am replaying one of my episodes that goes over 10 foods to avoid. It goes so well with this episode, and it's going to highlight some of those foods that maybe you are thinking are healthy but are not. So make sure you guys tune into the next episode. All right, friends, I hope that you guys all keep moving and have a great day.